Good morning and welcome to our tutorial on how to plant a Duarte containerized almond tree. When your plants arrive at the field and you're getting ready to plant, these are the items that you'll probably have. You're going to see that you have your potted almond tree. It's in a pot. Right here you're going to notice the bud union, and then where the scion variety has been grown up the stake, you're going to notice there's a bamboo. The tree will be tied tightly to the bamboo. That all stays on during the planting. And the bamboo is actually painted at the top to help you when you're laying out your plants along the field. Not every plant will have a label on it, but as you're distributing plants from the flats, you will then be able to tell what varieties are what and how to space them out in your row. Another thing that you'll probably have when you're planting is a shelter. Shelters are recommended. We sell them. You can buy them through various channels. Ours, we've provided a dark band inside, and that we've learned that helps to cut down on reflection of the sun in the summer months that could be beating in here and hitting against the trunk of the tree. With your Duarte containerized almond trees, you can order shelters, so make sure that that's something that you're doing when you're placing your order or even right before delivery. Before you plant the trees, it's very important to have a good field prep program. One thing that's very important is your herbicide control. It's best to have the field clean, the berms clean, free of weeds. The next most important thing is probably pre-irrigation. Make sure that your irrigation system is installed prior to planting and that the berms are pre-irrigated before you attempt to plant the trees. One thing to take into consideration with your pre-soil irrigation and then also the following irrigations are what type of soil do you have? Do you have a light, loose, sandy soil that's not going to hold water, or do you have a heavy clay soil that will hold water very tightly? So the best thing to do before you start this is to contact your field rep and make sure you have ideas and options on how to irrigate those young trees. One important step before you plant the trees, which seems simple, but you'll have a crew come before you and lay the trees out along the berm. Please remember that these pots that the trees are in, they're black and they're plastic, and they will get hot if they're left out here very long. So it's really not a good idea to lay the trees out maybe the day before or even 6 hours before. The pot can get very hot and the root ball can dry up right away. So just lay them out in a manner that makes sense. You're ahead of yourself, but you're not too far ahead of yourself. So you only need to dig the hole maybe a few inches larger than your root ball is by rule of thumb. You also don't want to dig the hole too early in advance for the same reasons that you don't want to put the tree out on the berm too early in advance. This hole can get hot, the moisture you've put in it can dry out, and you can cause a problem there when you're then putting the root ball in. So now that we've dug the hole, we can look into it and we can check out our soil moisture. It's really easy to see. You can even tell by the color. This is dark, this just came out of the hole. This is much lighter, this has been on top and dry for a while. This soil is a nice clay loam, so it's not super sandy. You can tell when you pick up the soil and you squeeze it, it can stay into a ball, a little bit crumbly. If it was too wet, you'd be squeezing water out. Of course, you don't want that. You probably won't have that though. But you do want it to be able to keep some sort of form in your hand to know that you have good moisture in it. One of the most important things to know when you're planting this tree, the soil ball here is very lightweight material. It's peat moss, rice hulls, maybe some core, various things. But this is lightweight and it will dry out a lot faster than your native soil. So when you're checking your soil moisture, you have to make sure that your soil moisture is at full water holding capacity. Because when you plant this little root ball in, this soil is going to hold its moisture much tighter and will not relieve the water to the root ball unless there's plenty of water here and that root ball can then suck it in. Before we plant our tree, I want you to see the root system. That this is an intact root system. We don't want to disturb it. One thing that people have learned over the years is they would grab this and they would think we're going to separate and rip out all these roots, or maybe we're going to cut them to rejuvenate new root growth, something like that. With this, you don't have to do that at all. In fact, it's important not to do that. One of the advantages of the Duarte almond containerized tree is the fact that this plant has been started in a sterile soil media and has been in a container its whole life. It has never been in anyone's field. It has never had the opportunity to pick up crown gall, phytophthora, nematodes, anything like that. So if you now are going to cut into this and rip those roots, you're opening the root system up for wounds to possibly pick up crown gall or other diseases. The other thing to know is in this root system, the rootstock is this high, and right here you're going to see a dog leg in it. This is the bud union. This is where the scion variety was budded onto the rootstock variety. So here's your bud union, here's your scion, and here's your rootstock. When you're planting it, it's important to know when you put the root ball into the ground, again, we want to make sure that it's low enough to be below your natural field soil level by about 2 inches. It can be deeper, but the other important thing is we need to make sure that this bud union is about 4 fingers from the same soil level. So again, the rule of thumb is root ball below the natural soil grade by about 2 inches, and also most importantly, the bud union to be above the natural soil grade by at least 4 fingers. The other thing is make sure that this bud union is turned to the northwest. That's where your prevailing winds are going to come in, and you want to make sure that that tree can grow into it, as opposed to being like this, where then the wind's going to push it backwards. So here's the bud union. We want to face it to the northwest. The other thing, that tilt we were talking about, is about 5 to 10 degrees, not a lot. There's 4 fingers. It could even be 5 or 6, but again, it's the root ball is buried sufficiently so that's okay that this is taller. All trees are a little bit different. Another thing, you do want to tamp down the soil around the root ball, but you want to be careful. If you're in a rush, you can actually squish this root ball in there and cause a lot of bent roots or J rooting. Don't want that. So I'm being very careful, bringing back my soil. So now that the tree's in the ground, we want to get the water on it right away. It's very important. So there's different types of irrigation system we're probably using. If you have double line drip, you need to get the emitters as close as possible back onto that root ball. Remember earlier we talked about the soil, the water holding capacity of the natural soil around it. Now is where we want to get it wet. We want to really make sure that it's wet enough to give up to that little root ball. Therefore, the closer the emitters can be to the root ball, the better. Sometimes in drip lines that have preset emitters, you're going to look down and you can see that some of the emitters are luckily will fall right next to this root ball. If it doesn't, you may have to do something. Ideally, when you first set up the drip lines, back at the end of the risers, you're going to have them set up to where it's offset. So those 2 emitters aren't going to be in the same spot, and they're going to be offset, and eventually all the way down your berm, you're going to have an even water distribution. So that's something that if you didn't get it right when it was originally installed, it's really important to pay attention right now to make sure that every one of these root balls has water falling right on it. So if they're not offset properly, and if you can't pull one to make that offset, you may have to punch an emitter in close by with some sort of tube or some way that one tree is going to get water in the beginning. Another thing that people will use is they'll use microsprinklers, kind of the same principle. Wherever your microsprinkler is falling at that point, you can actually buy those adapters or those little hats that go onto them that help direct that water flow straight down into a smaller pattern as opposed to a larger pattern. Because right now, remember, we need the moisture right here at this tree. At the first 5 months of watering this young orchard, it's going to be where you want to keep the emitters close to the tree. After 5 months, you can imagine those roots have now taken off and they've gone out. In fact, it will take about 2 weeks after you plant this tree and get it watered in and there's sufficient moisture. Those roots are going to be moving and being established for about 2 weeks before you actually start to see new growth. So that's something to expect. That's typical. That's okay. But after about 5 months, you need to move that water source away if they're double line drip, or if they're sprinklers, you're going to have a bigger pattern shooting out that time. At that point, you don't need all that water concentrated right here at the crown of your tree. If you do so, you'll maybe get some phytophthora or other disease issues. So at that point, it's a good idea to then get the water off the crown of the tree and out into the root ball. Second priority of the day, the first was the water, the second is going to be the shelters on the trees. So the shelters, we do recommend that you get them on the very first day. They are really going to help this young tree from stress. Now it's out in the open, in the field situation. There's going to be a lot of wind and a lot of sun on it. So putting the shelter on is going to help protect it from wind, drying out, sunburn, and even small mammals. And in the long run, your biggest advantage from the shelter is going to be herbicide protection when you're spraying these berms again. So just carefully put it over the top of your tree. Make sure it sits down, and that's it. Again, you can see the dark band on top, which will help reflection of hard sun rays right here at the tree and protect it. So now that the tree's planted and we have our drip line up where we need it to be, there's going to be 3 important things that you want to consult your field rep in: fertilizing, pruning, and watering your tree. So remember, it's a particular time of the year for you that may be different from your neighbor. Your soil may be different from anyone else's. Your water holding capacity, the nutrients in the soil, those are all going to be different from anyone else. So you should call your field rep, who should help you walk through the steps on when to prune, how to fertilize, and how to irrigate your new planted tree. Rule of thumb is you want to wait about 3 weeks after planting this tree before you apply your first fertilizer application. So again, consult your field rep on what sort of fertilizer rates to be using. Also, pruning your tree depends on the condition that it showed up and the time of the year of where and how to top the tree. Some people may typically just top it off right here at the bamboo stake. So that is something that you'll probably hear from the rep, but again, call them and ask them. Finally, how to water your young tree. Typically 3 times a week throughout the first growing season. Growing season is usually April through October. But again, consult your field rep whether or not you're using double line drip or microsprinklers, and what part of that growing season you're in, and how long to leave the water running during those 3 times a week. You need to ask your field rep those questions. As you're talking to your field rep regarding your water schedule, one thing that will really help him out to give you the best advice is if you're checking that moisture yourself. And an easy, simple way to do it is, remember, back to this root ball, we want to get down to it. So you want to expose this root ball, and I can easily see the roots. I can see the difference between the potting soil media and the natural soil, so I can tell where I am. And you just stick your fingers into that root ball and you can feel if it's wet or not. So that's the way to know, is your irrigation getting there, or is this day 5 and is it dry or is it wet? That will help your field rep know what's going on. Thank you very much for watching. This video is a tool to help you get going and know what to do to avoid maybe any simple mistakes or confusion. Please consult on your field rep. Again, they will know your site, your goals, your field better than this video. Join us on Duarte Nursery YouTube channel. We will have more tutorials, pruning, irrigating, other crops as well. Thank you again for your time, and good luck with your orchard.